Hi, welcome to ITIL tutorial. My name is Chandra MR. So today I'm going to present to you the ITIL tutorial, glimpse of what is the latest version of ITIL, that is ITIL 4. Right, so agenda of this session is we are going to understand what is ITSM, that is IT Service Management. Then we are going to the introduction of ITIL 4 framework, which is the latest version of ITIL, the best practice for IT Service Management. So ITIL 4 framework comprises of a service value system. In term, it will have guiding principles, governance, framework, service value chain, management practices, and continual improvement. So, and also ITIL 4 throws lights on four dimension of IT service management. Right, what is ITSM? So ITSM stands for IT Service Management, that is Information Technology Service Management. When we say Information Technology Service Management, basically any IT organization, what we think today, it's all about services. So we may have a product like a computer or a router or an application. We may have the product. So ultimately, a service will get created using this technology components. That is the reason it's called as IT Service Management rather than just a product what we are focusing on. Definitely, when we do a service, we need to use the products as well as the services. Every services would be comprising of a product as well as services. For example, if you take taxi service like Ola or Uber, any organization you can think about. Now, products like mobile app, products like a car, product like a computer, a server where these applications are hosted. At the same time, to access those server or application, you may require to use the services, that is mobile service or internet service or application management service, cloud service, etc. So any services to make them available to the customer, you need to have a products as well as services configured certain way. So those needs to be managed together for the success of the service. So that's what ITIL, a best practice for information technology service management, would show its interest or throw the lights into that and provides you the necessary framework required. So when we say IT service management, it is basically a set of specialized organizational capability in terms of the capability of the people, capability of the tools, the resources, the products, which will enable value for customers in the form of services. So any services availed by customer has to realize the value. Customer should have get some sense where while using that services they should get some value in terms of, for example, taxi service example I took, where while using the taxi, the intent of a person who booked the taxi is to travel from place A to place B. That intent has to be fulfilled, not just moving from place 1 to place B. All that experience the customer will come across while traveling after booking the taxi, from the point the customer books the taxi till taxi arrives, then travel in the taxi, and then after reaching the destination, getting out of the taxi. So throughout this journey, customer should have a good experience. That's where the value perception will get created. It's not about service provider creating the value, but customer should perceive it. The benefit realization should happen to the customer. Only then a service provider can create the value. So that is very important when we do service management. And this particular point in terms of value, which should be created together. It's not just service provider is focusing on creating value. Involvement of customer would also be there to some extent in terms of creating the value, meaning customer should respond in terms of what benefits they have obtained by availing their service. Is that okay? Not okay? Or while booking a taxi will arrive in 5 minutes as promised. Now, once it appears, you need not sit back and then make the taxi to wait. So through that, you are not going. The customer will not give a good experience to service provider. Meaning, a customer should also not take service provider for granted. Value is always a co-creation, so that both can get benefited. So that's what ITIL 4 stresses upon. So key concept will be co-creation of value and its nature, as I explained just now. Then business, service provider, organization, service consumer, customer, and all are involved as stakeholders. So with the collective collaboration together, they involve to create the value for both. Then this includes the products and services to form a service. Then every services there is a touch point, there is a transaction which happens. So service provider and consumer of the service, the customer, there should be some relationship, and this relationship should also be managed with the customer, which is very important. So introduction to ITIL, the best practice of IT service management. We will look at it, what exactly ITIL is. So it is a set of guidelines, right? ITIL is a set of guidelines, a library where one can see what exactly the service management is, understand what needs to be practiced to deliver a best services to the customer. It is very essential. Now, ITIL being a best practices which is there throughout has evolved such a way that it suit the industry requirement at a given point in time. So latest version ITIL 4 is evolved from ITIL V3 2011, which the previous was ITIL V3 released in 2008, and the previous version was V2, then which was focusing on delivery alone. Today, ITIL 4 focus on service value system, whereas ITIL V3 was focusing on service life cycle. So ITIL 4 focus on service value system. Now, service value system depicted in ITIL 4 comprises of guiding principles. There are 7 guiding principles. Then thought of continual improvement applicable to entire services. Then a governance which sets the directions and authority. And then 34 practices. Then service value chain which forms the core of service value system. So any services which needs to be delivered starts with an opportunity existing in the market. Opportunity exists in the organization itself, that there may be an internal IT organization fulfilling the need of a business. Taxi service, I took an example. Similarly, if I take a bank as an example, the service of the bank is totally different, not IT service. Now, for making banking service successful, IT services provided to bank should be aligned to the need of the banking services. So there is an opportunity exists, demand exists. To fulfill that demand, one has to ensure the value creation is accordingly. Now, taxi booking service, if I said I want to book a taxi, now all that interfaces like mobile banking application or the internet services or the vehicle which is been allocated for taxi services, all these products and services should align such a way that it facilitate the customer to travel from place A to place B by using that services by which the value realization happens. So to make it happen from the requirements where it is expressed through opportunity demand, that needs to be fulfilled through features functionality of the product and its demonstration, which will happen through entire service value system. And there are guiding principles, governance, service value chain practices, and continual improvement thoughts and concepts which needs to be applied while doing it. The 7 guiding principles are focus on value, meaning everything what you do in a services, it should be value driven. So you should ultimately look at what customer gets, what we as a service provider can able to make to ensure that customer gets the value. Similarly, what is that realization back in our organization as a service provider? What do we get? Then start where you are. Means there is no idealistic scenario to say that I will start from this point. However, you may require to assess the current situations. What is there with me? What is my strength? What is my weakness? What is there with me? What is not there? I may require to create what is not there with me, and then I should start from there. So that I start whatever the scenario, assessing that, analyzing it, and take a necessary action accordingly, so that I can move towards the creation of value or to fulfill those requirements. Progress iteratively with feedback. So this principle actually came up with the thought that today's scenario of dynamics of the market, so changing market needs, changing customer demand, to accommodate that and reach the customer quickly and fulfill the customer requirement. So iterations are taken, short iterations are taken, and each iterations there will be something delivered. That value is checked, and then find what is right, what is wrong in that iteration, do the necessary correction, move to the next iterations. So this can help organization to move quickly. So this also help in terms of better collaboration with the customer. That's why it says collaborate and promote visibility. So by moving iteratively, collaborating with customer, a co-creation of the services can happen. And as you create a working product, working piece of the product, you will learn what exactly the features functionality is given and how is that functioning. Immediate feedback can be obtained. Means there is a visibility which comes into picture. The next is think and work holistically. Now, for me to travel from place A to place B, for example, I will use the map. Now, initially, I will see starting point to the destination. How, what route it takes, we will see in the map. Then, as we travel, we'll come to the immediate next action which needs to be taken. That is short view. So, one is bigger view, holistic picture, end to end picture. Taking that bigger picture, working on the shortest vision, and move towards the destination. So to think and work holistically, one has to have a bigger picture first. So where anyone lacks that bigger picture cannot get into the results what is needed. The next is keep it simple and practical. When I say keep it simple, it is not that I'm ignoring everything. I'm just making a few things. It means I am going to do minimum. what makes sense for that transaction to achieve that results effectively. All that I need to do, minimum I need to do, and optimize, right? And it should be practical. It is not that I am just writing an hypothesis and building it up some solution which will become very difficult for us to achieve things. So that needs to be simple and practical. Then optimize and automate. When we say optimize, it's about achieving more with less, or whatever you have, increasing the results with that whatever you have, or ensuring we bring in that optimization through usage of tools so that there is no linearity. As I increase the resources, results will go up. There is something called law of diminishing returns. So keeping all this in mind, when you bring in a tool to automate, which can handle the work which is more frequently occurring and error prone activities, so automation would help in terms of bringing down the errors, increasing the efficiency and effectiveness. So these principles are applicable universally to all the services, and this cannot be made any modifications or so. So this needs to be demonstrated. How it has to be demonstrated depends on how do you practice, what framework you have adopted. Accordingly, it goes. Now, next component in service value system is governance. Now, governance basically refers to evaluation, direction, and monitoring of activities in a governing body of any ITSM framework. Now, when organization have a direction, so for example, a bank says, I want to have 100 ATM centers to be established across the region. Now, that is a direction what bank has. Now, how does this IT service organization can enable it? So that was also need to have a set a direction in terms of setting a targets to service management organization. So this needs to have a proper guidance and establish proper control system so that successfully achievement of goals and objectives can happen. Like in the new framework, that is ITIL 4, the role of governance for successful IT service management has been stressed, spoken specifically what needs to be brought into the place. So insisted on establishment of service value system, establishment of a governance in their service value system, and effectiveness thereof has become very important, and that is stressed more. Now, next component what we have when service value system is service value chain. So now service value chain lies at the core of the service value system as we saw, which consists of key activities which needs to be performed for achieving the service value through service outputs and the outcomes. So there is a difference between output and an outcome. A product or a service which comes out as a result of some action, we call it as an output. The impact of that, we call it as an outcome. For example, I create an HR application like attendance monitoring system or payroll processing. There is an application which we create. That application is an output. Now, what does it do? It processes leaves, have an information processed for attendance, payroll, all this it does. So because of that, what is that outcome is quick processing, efficiency, effectiveness, increased customer satisfaction, improved productivity, etc. So those will become outcomes resulting in benefits to the organization. So having this visibility by availing my services, what exactly the outcome it will happen to the customers or to the business, that needs to be visualized, which happens in service value system, enabled and delivered by service value chain within the service value system. So as the opportunity is realized, there is an engagement which happens, engaging with the customer, engaging with the stakeholder, understanding the requirements thoroughly, and then accordingly services are designed. So when you design a services, you will look at designing a solution, you would look at designing a technology architecture, technical design I can say. Then you can look at designing defining a processes, metrics, KPIs, then measurement methods and tools. So those design thoughts, consideration of required components, tools, resources are considered, and accordingly you will obtain and build. Then once you do it, transition happens, meaning you bring that blueprint of design, whatever you have, into the reality. So then service will become operations where you deliver and support, meaning you monitor, manage that services throughout its life cycle. So as a result, you create a product or services which in turn create value to the customer, as I explained earlier, by availing the services. And all this is done aligning to the guiding principles and the direction set by the governance. And here in service value chain, the 34 practices are used, followed, applied as needed. So in service value chain, two scenarios you can think of: introduction of a new services, resolution of the incidents which occur in that service. Two extreme conditions. Now, while introducing or modifying a services, the required practices will be taken, and all these activities in the service value chain are applicable. Similarly, when you resolve an incident, again, the activities in this are involved. For example, an incident occurs. Now, I cannot resolve without changing certain configurations. So what I will do, raise a change request. So these change requests may not be simpler one, like I need to do some configuration changes, which requires an approval from an cab. Then there is need to be changes in the design to accommodate this change so that it eliminates certain bugs in the entire value system of the services. And then elimination of the bug in the application or infrastructure, you will transition it, meaning you make that incident resolved. So meaning the activities in a service value chain are involved while introduction of new services as well as resolving a service incident. So this requires a thorough planning and then thought of improving those performances regularly. So value realized will be checked and feedback will be obtained, and that would also create certain demand in terms of further modifying the services and improving it, right? So next component in service value system, what we have is the practices. So ITIL 4 defines 34 management practices to adopt the modern organization dynamics, where it considers all the dynamics of current organization scenarios like innovation, speed to market, responding to market dynamics, so that quick response can come up. Scaling resource dynamically can happen in a scenario where resource scaling needed and where a quick response to the market scenarios or the market requirements which comes up. So it is grouped as general management practices, service management practices, and technical management practices, where 14 general management practices are used or applicable across the organization for success of the business and services provided by organization. So service management practices are 17 which are applicable for specific service which are being developed, deployed, delivered and supported in an organization environment. Whereas technical management practices have been adopted for technology management domains of service management purposes by expanding or shifting their focus from technology solution to IT services. So there are three technical management practices. In total, 34 management practices, service in specific service management practices. Now, if you look at one by one, the architecture management provide an understanding and view of all different elements of an organization as a whole. Each of those elements interfaced or interrelate to enable organization to achieve its objective continuously. So it may be a business architecture, it may be a service architecture, it may be information architecture, or it may be environmental architecture. Similarly, continual improvement focuses on ensuring continued alignment of services and practices of the organization by identifying the opportunity of improving things on a continual basis. So this requires a consideration of improvements to the business, improvement to the service experience, improvement in terms of culture, improvement to fulfill the changing need of the market. Likewise, it is a continued requirement to sustain and grow. So information security management focuses on ensuring the protection of information of an organization throughout the information lifecycle. So it has to ensure safeguarding the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information so that organizations' information is safeguarded and it is safeguarded from an unauthorized access and misuse. Similarly, knowledge management focuses on ensuring the maintenance and improvement of information and knowledge effectively and efficiently for the convenience usage of information and knowledge throughout the organization. So this may enable organization to ensure that it has a sufficient knowledge, required knowledge in time, so that it can take a informed decision. Now, measurement and reporting. So unless we measure something like service measurement or components performance measurement or business performance measurement as a whole, if you look at, unless we measure, we will not know how the performance is and what is that contribution is actually happening. So one has to measure and report the performance of business or services, which should help in making decision and improving the services and business performance. That is the reason measurement and reporting needs to be considered critically. And this is not applicable to any specific service. All the service together should contribute towards the business as a whole. Then organizational change management, this thought basically comes from adopting a specific best practices or any of the new things which has been introduced into the organization. So this helps in managing all the human aspects of the organization, where we can also term it as a cultural transformation required to provide IT services. What is the change needed? What is the transformation needed in the organization as a whole to bring that value co-creation happening in the organization? So next, portfolio management. Portfolio management focuses on ensuring that organization has a right mix of programs or projects or products or services so that commercially or in the business perspective, it makes sense. So this requires considerations of organization strategy for investment or to introduce the services or to improve the services or to retire a service. So in totality, portfolio management focuses on all the services which are there in pipeline, the services in operation and services are being retired. Next, the project management practice ensures adoption and adoption of best practices of the project management, where formal project management approach, maybe you may bring in a thought of project management professional PMP, what is depicted in PMBOK of PMI, or Prince2 approach, what is depicted in Axelos portfolio. So any of those best practices which are actually acknowledged in the industry, you can adopt and bring in. Lately, I think we're speaking about agile more and more in the industry. So agile project management practices can also be brought in. So now relationship management. So for any specific services to be successful, relationship with the customers, relationship with the consumers, relationship with the suppliers plays a very important role. So one has to ensure that engagement with those entities, with those stakeholders at various different levels has to be established and maintained throughout the life cycle of the project so that communication can become effective and right information can flow in the right perspective. Then risk management, as we know, risk refers to uncertainty. So every service will have an uncertainty, but this risk, if I just look at a service level itself, it doesn't help. The risk management should also be looked at the organization level so that efficient and effective handling of services and creation of value can happen. Further, a service financial management system. So service finance in the sense every services what is provided by organization is an investment with an objective to achieve. There should be a return out of it. So budgeting, accounting, and charging. These are the three things mainly focused when we say service financial management. One way one has to ensure service is making sense to invest, where this complement to the service portfolio management. Similarly, the charging system what is been shared with the customers, that pricing should help in terms of making that return in terms of profits which needs to come in. And then these transactions of investment, I mean, outgoing financial resources and incoming financial resources, this needs to be tracked and accounted. So all these thoughts, all these best practices are adopted through service financial management practice. Now, strategy management. So for every services we do, every investment we do, there should be specific directions and goal and strategy to accomplish it. So strategy management helps in establishment of a specific directions and strategy with the defined goals and objectives so that the course of action which needs to be taken to accomplish those objectives can be taken and specific directions can be set accordingly. Now, supplier management. So every organization, when they provide services, it is not necessary that all the products or services they create by themselves. They need suppliers as well. So, for example, if I am an organization with who provides taxi services, obviously I need a internet service from my internet service provider so that people can access my website or mobile app to book the taxi. So I need a supplier like internet service provider. So identification of supplier, which are those services I will get from the suppliers is very critical to understand, and that is a critical decision. So the make or buy decision has to be made first, and there should be a strategy for the suppliers, and then identify the supplier, onboard the supplier, and then manage the suppliers relationship and terminate, retire, means end that relationship with the supplier if necessarily needed, if service of the supplier is no more required or services of the supplier is not up to that mark. The next general management practice is workforce and talent management. So to become successful in any services, there should be a right mix of people with the right capabilities and skills. So in the absence of that, whatever the best of the technologies, best of the practices an organization adopts, it cannot become successful. This plays very important role, having a right workforce in place, not just for services across the organization. So that is the focus workforce and talent management practice focuses on. Now moving to service management practices. So 17 service management practices. The first one, if you look at the availability management. So every services should be available as promised, as required by the customer and as promised by the service provider. So availability of services is basically needed when business requires. So if I say I operate 24 bar 7, like a customer care of a mobile service provider. So customer care services should be there for 24 hours in all the days operating. So any 1 hour that customer care is not available, then there is I did not fulfill that availability requirement. Similarly, internet services, similarly, any of your website services which where you use to book some tickets, for example. So availability of that website becomes very important for the success of the business. Now, business analysis. So this practice basically ensures analyzing the business and business elements and ensure recommendation of solution which will address and solve the business problems. Further, the value is enabled in alignment with objectives of business and organization for every services which are being provided. That is the focus of business analysis practice. Then capacity and performance management. So when we say capacity and performance management, so a sufficient capacity needs to be there for fulfilling the demand of the services. So these demands would be varying in the market, and as that demand varies, I should also ensure the variations or optimization of my capacity accordingly, and also I may influence the demand as well so that I can have the capacity utilized fully, or optimization I can do using it. So that performance management of capacity in terms of utilization, in terms of the trend of utilization, and what is that capacity in future, prediction of that capacity management focuses. So three levels of capacity we would look at: a component level capacity, a service capacity, as well as business capacity. Then change control. So any changes which we do in our service environment, so these changes cannot get implemented just like that. So these needs to be implemented with full approval, authorization from the authorized. So this requires a thorough analysis of what is this change is all about. To make the change successful, that needs to be analyzed, understood, and impact has to be looked at, and what it takes for implementing this change, and is it necessarily we need to do this change or not. All this needs to be understood, and then approval needs to be provided before implementing the change. And after implementing the change, that should not result in some incidents or disturbance to the system. So totally every change being implemented in the service environment needs to be controlled through proper authorization from the authorized entity, like change advisory board. So change control process, or sorry, practice focuses on that aspect of it. Now, next practice, incident management. So as we know, incident management refers to the incident itself, refers to disturbance or destruction or degradation of certain services. So that needs to be corrected, that needs to be restored so that users have a uniform experience. So incident management practice focuses on restoration of that services to normal working condition. So next, IT asset management. So every asset which are used for IT services has its own life cycle. So from the beginning of acquiring that particular IT asset until it is told it is no more useful and retire that. So or scrapped till the time that IT asset has to be managed. This will carry certain value associated with that. So it is a valuable resource, a component that will contribute to the delivery of services. So that needs to be monitored, managed, and kept under the purview of IT assets list, and life cycle of that has to be managed. So IT asset management practice focuses on that. Then monitoring and event management. So monitoring being a practice where it focuses on observing and learning what is happening in the IT environment and identifying what is that event, which is a change of state of a IT component or of an IT services which will have an impact to the business. So identification of that, correlation of that, and making sense out of it, and determining whether this event which has occurred is just an event of no significance, is this occurrence is has some significance which needs to be informed, is this event has some significance where a warning alert has to be sent so that necessary actions can be taken, then it will not lead to a incident. Similarly, an exceptional event where something has failed, so which needs to be treated quickly for restoration. So monitoring and event management focuses on identifying of these, sending, taking necessary control actions, and at the same time reading the trend, understanding the trend of the behavior, and taking the necessary steps towards providing the insight to the service management so that they can take necessary actions to improve the service experience. Now, problem management, as we say, problem refers to underlying cause of one or more incidents. So problem management needs to focus on potential and actual causes of incidents and provide the workaround and resolution for it. So problem management can be done two ways: proactive problem management, reactive problem management. So it is always recommended to be proactive in terms of doing problem management so that one can unearth the causes proactively so that resulting incidents can be eliminated. So reactive problem management may happen when something fails and have a big impact. What caused that incident? To understand that, one can go for reactive problem management. Then release management. So the term release basically refers to the specific version of the service or a configuration item or a collection of configuration items which are being released together. So they should comprise of very different infrastructure, application, which should work together to deliver services which are released to the environment so that service is having certain additional features, functionality, or service itself is released. So this needs to be scheduled, this needs to be done in a controlled manner. So this practice work very close with change control process. So next practice service catalog management, where we provide where service catalog provides a single source of information of all the services which are in operations, means service offerings details, so that this service catalog should be up to date, relevant, and has to be accessed by the authorized so that they know what are the service offerings are. Now, service configuration management, as itself says, identifies, captures, and establishes the CMDB configuration management database, which will store information about all the configuration items and the way they are related to each other. So, configuration item, when I say it refers to a software, a hardware, people, documents, building, whichever is used to form the services, maybe configurable item. Then service continuity management, when we say this should not be get compared with availability management, or one should not get confused by understanding the continuity management versus availability management. So availability management focus in the perspective of service itself, whereas continuity management looked at a business perspective, where minimum number of services should be up and running so that business will not get impacted. It can continue even in the disaster scenario. That is the focus of service continuity management. So for doing it effectively, one has to understand business impact analysis, business risk analysis. Once they do it, continuity solutions has to be designed or defined. Service design having five aspects focused on it, like solution designing, technology architecture designing, process design, measurement methods and metrics, right? So service design focus on ensuring designing of a services and products with the specific features, functionality, so that necessary utility and warranty is there, then it facilitates customer to achieve the intended outcome. So service design focus on creating that service blueprint. I think in ITL V3 we were calling it as service design package. So service design practices focus on that. And whereas service level management. So service level management at any given point in time, a service should be working at certain level. So service level management focus on understanding and defining, giving that information of service level requirements and signing off that particular service levels with the customers and designing the services accordingly. So it can be customer based service levels, it may be service based SLAs, which is signed and accordingly that needs to be accomplished. So further, you can also call it as service level agreements signed with the customer, operation level agreements which are signed with various different function within organization. Similarly, agreements or contracts signed with the suppliers. Then service desk. So service desk being a practice called as practice in ITIL 4, which was used to be called as function in ITIL V3 2011. This provides a required channel for users to contact or report issues, requests, queries. So further, service desk will look at acknowledging all that request, all that incident which is been logged by the users. So that logged incidents or requests are taken, they're classified based on the specific hardware or software or application or department, whatever the considerations the organization makes, and necessary prioritization would be made, and that is resolved accordingly. So three main practices which very closely work with service desk, if you can think of, is request fulfillment, request management practice, incident management practice, access management practice. Means access basically comes with information security, what is defined there in general management practices. Now, service request management. So, as we say, service request management. So, service requests are placed by users to fulfill those. A standard change request can be a service request. A request to implement a specific application child piece in a customer's laptop or desktop, a user's laptop or desktop, can be called as a request. So, many such requests providing some access or implementation of certain application into the system or doing certain standard changes. So all these requests has to be handled professionally. So that needs to be provided at pre-approved, pre-authorized, agreed quality. So it has to be supported by handling the predefined user requests, which are initiated by users in professional and friendly manner. Request management practice should focus that way. Then service validation and testing. So every services which are considered to be implemented, deployed, maybe in the scenario of implementation of change, maybe in the scenario of introduction of new services, maybe in the scenario of modifying the new services. So you acquire components, you test them, meaning you're validating against what is the requirement of performance. Then you configure them, put together. So again, you validate towards what is being agreed with. So performance should be accordingly. So at every levels, right from component level till the formation of the services to fulfill the business requirements, service validation and testing plays its role. The next three practices we need to look at is technical management practices, which are specific to looking at managing the technology part of it. So deployment management. So as you scheduled your releases in service of a specific service in a service management, maybe multiple services releases are scheduled. Those are validated by service validation and testing. Now these needs to be brought into a environment, deployed in the real time. So moving that, changing those applications or products of infrastructure and putting that service component, a CI, into production environment. So deployment management focuses on that. Coming to infrastructure and platform management. So every services we do, we may require to have a specific infrastructure components, platforms, so that necessary components are configured in such a way where it helps to create a service. So this would involve a network device, this would involve a server, this would involve an operating system, so that all that components, infrastructure components and platforms which are required for delivering IT services, and the configuration item used by customers to access the services, that needs to be better interfaced with this. Even that needs to be checked at while doing infrastructure and platform management. So the focus should be there. Similarly, software development and management. Obviously, as we looked at infrastructure and platform management, we have to look at application or software perspective to implement those as well, to deploy them, right? So software deployment and management basically focus on that software application or software which is being developed or software which is being acquired needs to be deployed, configured, customized so that customer can get the value. It will perform accordingly. So that is about technical management practices, three technical management practices. So this is just a briefing about 34 practices where focus of the practices should be, and these practices will be applicable in the service value chain activities. So these practices are taken according to the need of that scenario of the services wherever is required. So if you say I'm modifying certain services, let me say there is a service which is being modified to improve the performance. Now what is that I need? I need to understand this straight away requires a service management practice. Firstly, we need to look at change control, obviously. So change control initiates all other may trigger with other go and trigger other practices like design, service design part of it, or maybe service level management or release management for scheduling, service validation and testing, and then getting into technical management practices to literally deploying the change. So likewise, according to whatever the scenario of services under service lifecycle, respective practices are taken and those are triggered. All of them working together would create a better service experience for the customers. So this concludes a summary or basic description overview of the practices. So further, we will move forward to understand service value system component, that is continual improvement component. So very importantly, what we should keep in mind is whenever, whatever we do, everything needs to be improved. If there is no improvement happening, things will get stagnated, things will not move forward easily. So one has to ensure each of these services are improved on a continual basis. Whether it is a capability of organization, if it is a capacity, if it is performance, if it is efficiency, if it is effectiveness, all these needs to be improved. As it improves, the contribution keeps happening, the value realization keeps happening better. That ensures the sustenance of a business and also growth of a business. There would be a continued innovation. Right? Earlier it was depicted in ITIL V3 as continual service improvement. But here it says continual improvement, which means improvement is applicable across, not just for an individual service. Right? This process focus on improving services, service performance, performance of service component, individuals performance happens continually throughout the business existence. Now this required a process to ensure organization is keeping up with all the stakeholders expectation. meaning they should be connect with the stakeholders also, their value realization, and what would be their pursued view of that value, what they are aiming for. All this are considered while moving forward and improving the services on a continual basis. That is about continual improvement. Now, ITL 4 stresses upon four dimensions. So, four dimensions are, we have organization and people as one dimension, we have information and technology as second dimension, then partners and suppliers as third dimension, value streams and processes as fourth dimension. Now, these four dimensions are not in order, they are together. Four dimensions are together, where they come together in the service value system, what we discussed just now in the previous slides. These four dimensions thought will be there and needs to be considered. Having these in place, a product or services will get created, and that should result in creation of value. Now, when I say organization and people, I'm speaking about a specific organization structure and the roles and responsibility for which peoples are assigned to it. And when you're going to assign an individual to a specific role, that person or individual should have that skill to accomplish the results of that role. So that's where organization and people dimension focus on. When it comes to information and technology, the required information, the required technology needs to be acquired, configured, implemented for a given services to enable that value to the business. Then partners and suppliers, every organization engages with the partners and suppliers, and they will not do everything by themselves. So for them to do everything by themselves, it is nearly impossible because their core expertise will be in something else. For example, we Edureka being a training organization avail an internet service from internet service provider. We ourselves cannot create an internet service supplier. So partner may be content management person, an organization who can sit with us and develop a content for Edureka possible. So partner goes along with the service providers organization, whereas supplier sits behind supporting the organization by providing the necessary services. Now value stream and processes. So a lot of processes which are used as part of service value system or service life cycle of a service. So each of these services are connected. For example, event management, which monitors a service. An incident occurs, an exceptional event occurs. Automatically, that particular event management would trigger an incident, meaning they are interfaced with each other. The incident management, while resolving the incident, may require to change something. It will trigger a change process. So likewise, each processes are connected certain way in certain situation basis, contextual basis. So outputs given by one process will go as an input to other process. End to end, if you look at, there is a value stream which created, a flow created, which should be smooth, and there should not be any issues during the handoff between one process to another process. The value stream should flow smoother. So all these four dimensions are influenced by pestle factors. What are those pestle factors? Political factors, economical factors, social factors, technological factors, legal factors, and environmental factors. They will get impacted by those, right? So that's about ITL 4 in very brief. I hope this session gave you good insight towards understanding what is ITIL 4 framework is all about. So thank you until we meet again and come back with the next webinar session. Thank you.
I hope you have enjoyed listening to this video. Please be kind enough to like it, and you can comment any of your doubts and queries, and we will reply them at the earliest. Do look out for more videos in our playlist and subscribe to Edureka channel to learn more. Happy learning!